Star Wars is more than a series of movies. It is a myth, a legend, a story that has shaped generations. It has inspired hope, defined heroism, and given audiences something to believe in. But what happens when a story that was once larger than life is dragged back into the cycle of endless continuation? What happens when a saga that already had its ending is reopened, rewritten, and stripped of everything that made it timeless? For decades, Star Wars stood as a complete narrative. The fall and redemption of Anakin Skywalker was the foundation on which everything rested. It was a story about destiny, about choices, about the battle between good and evil, and the balance that must be restored. It was not a story that needed to be told again, yet that is exactly what happened. The sequels arrived, claiming to be a continuation, but instead, they became something else entirely. There is a difference between expanding a story and undoing it. One respects what came before, the other diminishes it. The sequels did not continue the legacy of Star Wars, they unraveled it. The victory that was fought for, the lessons that were learned, the sacrifices that were made. All of it was taken and repackaged, not to build upon it, but to replace it. The result is something that does not enhance Star Wars, it weakens it. But here is the thing. A story only matters if people believe in it. And what happens when an audience refuses to accept what has been forced upon them? What happens when fans decide that something simply does not count? This is the power of storytelling, the power of choice. Just because something is made does not mean it has meaning. Just because something exists does not mean it belongs. In this video, we are going to break down exactly why the sequels do not matter. Not just from a storytelling perspective, but from a thematic narrative and even cultural perspective. We will look at how they ignored the past, how they failed their own characters, and how they ultimately became something Star Wars was never meant to be. By the end, you will see why the sequels are not just flawed, they are irrelevant. Star Wars told a complete story long before the sequels were even considered. It started with a young farm boy on a desert planet, dreaming of adventure, and it ended with a redeemed father saving his son from the very darkness that had consumed him. There was no loose end left unresolved, no lingering question that begged for an answer. The story of Anakin Skywalker was not only the foundation of Star Wars, but also its conclusion. So what happens when you continue something that has already ended? You create something that feels artificial, disconnected, and unnecessary. The original trilogy ended with balance restored to the Force, the Empire defeated, and the next generation ready to forge their own path. But instead of expanding upon that victory in a meaningful way, the sequels tore it all down. They rewrote the outcome, discarded the lessons learned, and left us with a story that felt like it had no reason to exist. What was the purpose of defeating the Emperor if he was just going to return? What was the meaning behind Anakin's sacrifice if it accomplished nothing in the long run? These are not questions that make Star Wars richer, they are questions that make it feel pointless. If a story has no lasting impact, then what is the point of telling it? The sequels do not matter because they do not respect what came before them. They do not build upon it in a natural way. They erase it and force something else in its place. If a sequel does not enhance the original, then it has failed in the most basic way. Luke Skywalker was a symbol of hope. He was the one who proved that destiny could be changed, that no one was beyond saving, and that even in the face of darkness, one could choose the light. That was his arc, his growth, his purpose. The sequels took that legacy and shattered it. What did we gain by seeing Luke broken, cynical, and defeated? What was accomplished by showing him running from his problems and giving up on the very beliefs that defined him? This was not the Luke Skywalker that audiences had followed for decades. This was a stranger wearing his name. If a character's journey ends in failure, then why was the journey worth taking at all? Han Solo was turned into a deadbeat father. Leia became a general fighting the same war she had already won. Every step forward that these characters had taken was undone, replaced with repetition and regression. It was not about honoring the past, it was about making the past irrelevant. And what did the sequels offer in return? A group of new characters that never felt like they had earned their place in the story. Rey was never tested, Finn was pushed aside, and Kylo was the only one given any depth. The heart of Star Wars was always its characters, and the sequels made them feel empty. Star Wars has always been about redemption. It was about how people are more than their worst mistakes, about how love and compassion can bring even the most lost souls back to the light. The prequels reinforced this idea by showing us the tragedy of Anakin Skywalker, and the originals fulfilled it by showing us his salvation. The sequels abandoned that message entirely. Ben Solo was given a rushed redemption, only to immediately die. The idea of breaking the cycle, of learning from the past, was ignored in favor of repeating it. The original trilogy showed us that no matter how deep the darkness, there was always a way out. The sequels showed us that none of it mattered. It is not just about storytelling, It is about philosophy. Star Wars was built on the idea that the Force is something greater than power, that it is about balance, destiny, and the struggle between good and evil. The sequels turned it into nothing more than bloodlines and accidents. Palpatine's return made the Force feel meaningless, Rey's abilities made struggle irrelevant, and Luke's failure made redemption feel like a lie. If Star Wars is not about redemption, if it is not about hope, then what is it even about? The sequels did not just forget what Star Wars stood for, they actively contradicted it. A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, those words used to mean something. They used to promise adventure, discovery, and endless possibilities. The Star Wars galaxy felt alive, full of civilizations, politics, and history. The sequels shrunk that galaxy down to a handful of ideas recycled from the past. The Republic that was built after the Empire's fall was destroyed off-screen. The Jedi Order that Luke was meant to rebuild never even had a chance. Instead of taking us to new worlds with new stories, the sequels just remade what already existed. The Empire returned under a different name. The Rebellion fought the same war with new faces. It was all familiar, yet lifeless. Where were the new ideas, the new conflicts, the new legends waiting to be told? Why did the galaxy feel so empty when it was once filled with so much wonder? Star Wars was always about moving forward, about exploring the unknown. The sequels did not expand the universe, they reduced it. If a story does not move forward, if it does not evolve, then it does not matter. It becomes a copy of itself, endlessly repeating without any purpose. That is what the sequels did to Star Wars. Star Wars belongs to its fans. It always has. It was never just about the movies, it was about the connection people had with them. The prequels faced criticism, but they never disrespected their audience. The sequels did. Fans were told that their heroes did not matter, that their love for Star Wars was misplaced. They were told that if they did not like what they were given, they were the problem. But how can anyone love something that does not love them back? The sequels did not just divide fans, they pushed them away. They created something that felt unrecognizable, that rejected the heart and soul of Star Wars. Instead of embracing the community, they alienated it. The result was not passion or excitement, it was exhaustion. The kind of exhaustion that comes from realizing that something you once loved has lost its way. A story is only as strong as the people who believe in it. If the fans stop believing, then what is left? A franchise with no heart, with no connection, with no meaning. The sequels do not matter because they do not change anything. They do not carry forward the spirit of Star Wars. They do not respect its past, and they do not offer a vision for its future. They exist in a strange space where nothing they do has weight, where nothing they introduce feels like it belongs. We do not need them. We never did. Star Wars was complete before they arrived, and it remains complete without them. The story of Anakin, Luke, Leia, and the battle between good and evil does not require what came after. It stands on its own, unchanged, untouchable. Time will forget the sequels. They will fade like a dream that never truly belonged. The true story of Star Wars will remain, because it is the one that mattered. Not because a corporation said so, but because the fans do. And in the end, that is all that ever really mattered.